Sometimes, even the best intentions in gaming can lead to the most heartbreaking moments. It all started on May 10th, 2018, when a fan named Tyler, TopNotch1210, sent a tweet to Insomniac Games with a massive request. He wanted to propose to his girlfriend of 5 years, Madison, using the upcoming Spider-Man game. Tyler tweeted, "Spidey Squad, I need your help. This may be selfish, but I'm ready to propose to my girlfriend and want to do it in a big way." He tagged Insomniac Games, Brian Intihar, and Bill Roseman in his tweet, asking if there is any way for the devs to put an Easter egg of, "Madison, will you marry me?" Insomniac Games actually responded, asking, "You sure she doesn't check your Twitter replies, dude?" And, "Sure, you can wait until September 7th. Tyler confidently replied that they had just passed their 5th anniversary and she would definitely still be around. Insomniac agreed, saying, "Who are we to say no to love?" When Marvel's Spider-Man launched on September 7th, 2018, the developers and Insomniac delivered. On a movie theater marquee in the game, the words, "Maddie, will you marry me?" were displayed in bright lights. This was such a cool and heartwarming moment that all the fans actually loved it and were praising Insomniac for this cool Easter egg, and this moment also meant a lot to the person who requested this, Tyler. However, the story had already taken a tragic turn. About 3 to 4 weeks before the game was released, Madison broke up with Tyler. According to Tyler's initial explanation video he posted on YouTube,
"The thing that sucks about this Easter egg is the date that I'm making this video now, 3-4 weeks ago. My girlfriend dumped me to go with my brother, basically throwing away the 5 years that we had together."
She dumped him to be with his brother, a claim Madison later denied in an interview with the Houston Press, stating she was unhappy in the relationship and merely grew close to his brother afterward. She also reportedly told him that a video game proposal wasn't the way she wanted to be proposed to anyway. This was such a sad moment for the gaming community. When fans found the sign, Tyler tweeted that it had become the saddest Easter egg. Insomniac Games quickly reached out and offered to patch the message out in a future update to save him the pain. Tyler declined the removal, but asked for a touching change instead. He requested that they replace the proposal with the name of his grandmother, who had passed away from cancer and was the person who gave him his very first Spider-Man comic, igniting his love for the character. If you play the game today, or the remastered version, the marquee no longer asks for Maddie's hand in marriage. Instead, it pays tribute to the woman who started his fandom. Since both Marvel's Spider-Man and Grand Theft Auto 4 share the same gritty, urban DNA of New York City or Liberty City, in the case of GTA, Insomniac couldn't resist hiding a perfect nod to the genre's other most famous criminal duo. Most players miss this because they zip through the levels too fast. But during the mission, Spider Hack, if you pause while crawling through the vents to access the Oscorp data, you are rewarded with a hilarious conversation between some unsuspecting thugs. If you listen closely, you can hear a criminal explicitly scolding his partner, yelling, "Roman, don't be an idiot. Roman's ready, and we're running late. Let's go." This isn't just a random name drop. It's a direct callback to Roman Bellic from GTA 4. Implying that while Spidey is busy fighting supervillains like Kingpin, Nico Bellic and his cousin are out there in the same city, likely messing up another heist or desperately trying to go bowling. It's a brilliant way to make the world feel alive, suggesting a shared universe where Liberty City's chaos bleeds right into Marvel's Manhattan. This is such a cool way of paying tribute to one of the coolest duos in open-world history, Nico and Roman Bellic. One of the game's most beloved features was actually born out of a hardware problem. On the original PS4 release, the console's hard drive simply wasn't fast enough to load the massive city of New York instantly. So, rather than making players stare at a blank screen, Insomniac turned the loading times into comedy sketches. Whenever you fast-traveled on PS4, the game played a cutscene of Spider-Man riding the New York City subway in full costume. These weren't just filler. They were hilarious bits of environmental storytelling, showing Spidey checking his phone, awkwardly standing next to sleeping commuters, or being totally ignored by New Yorkers who have seen way weirder things. It perfectly captured the friendly neighborhood vibe. But when the game was remastered for the PS5, Insomniac ran into a weird problem. The new SSD was too fast. The city now loads in less than 2 seconds, meaning the subway scenes literally didn't have time to play. The developers actually had to disable them by default because the game was ready to play before the animation could even start. However, they knew fans loved these moments so much that they added a specific toggle in the settings menu, allowing you to manually turn the subway scenes back on if you missed seeing Spidey awkwardly commute to work. While some technical compromises became fan favorites, another sparked one of the strangest controversies in modern gaming. Instead of being celebrated, this one spiraled into an internet firestorm that had nothing to do with performance or gameplay, and everything to do with a few missing puddles. To understand it, you have to go back to the start. When Marvel's Spider-Man was first announced at E3 2016, the reveal trailer blew everyone away. The lighting and reflections looked truly next-gen, and one specific scene, a fight sequence inside a warehouse, caught the eye of fans because the incredible water reflections shimmering on the floor. It looked like a graphical masterpiece. However, just weeks before the game's release in 2018, the internet detective struck. Fans analyzed new promotional screenshots of that same warehouse scene and noticed something terrible. The puddles on the floor were smaller, and some were missing entirely. This sparked a massive internet outrage that became known as Puddlegate. Forums lit up with accusations that Insomniac had secretly downgraded the game's graphics because the console couldn't handle the original version. The reality, however, was much simpler and funnier. Insomniac eventually had to step in and explain that there was no technical downgrade at all. The lighting and textures were actually improved. An artist had simply decided to move the puddles because they thought the original layout looked messy. It was purely an artistic choice, not a performance fix. To prove they had a sense of humor about the whole mess, Insomniac later patched a dedicated puddle sticker into the game's photo mode, literally allowing angry fans to add as many fake puddles as they wanted to the scene. On the flip side, sometimes game development isn't about high-tech features. It's about clever shortcuts to save memory. And Spider-Man hides one of the funniest examples in gaming history, right off the coast of Manhattan. As we all know, the PS4's hardware was limited and already being pushed to its absolute boundaries in 2018 by heavyweight titles like God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2, and Spider-Man was no exception. Because the game pushes the console to its limits by rendering millions of windows, dynamic reflections, and dense pedestrian traffic across the city, the developers had to conserve processing power wherever possible. Their solution? The tiny tourist boats are floating far out in the Hudson River. The team assumed that since players couldn't swim that far, no one would ever get close enough to inspect the passengers. As a result, they used what are known as low LOD models, extremely low polygon character meshes that look acceptable from a distance, but they look really horrible if you look closely. Of course, they underestimated the curiosity of gamers. Players eventually used photo mode tricks to break the camera boundaries and zoom in on the boats, revealing what the community immediately dubbed the boat people. These weren't humans. They were angular, nightmare fuel monsters with sharp edges, melted faces, and blocky hands that looked like they belonged in a horror game on the original PlayStation 1. The images went instantly viral, becoming a massive meme about the hidden horrors of New York. But here's the best part. Instead of being embarrassed or patching them out, Insomniac embraced the joke. When they released the high-fidelity PS5 remaster, they didn't upgrade the models to look realistic. Instead, they kept the blocky monsters exactly as they were, but added a tiny, high-definition sticky note to one of their chests that simply reads, "Did you miss us?" immortalizing the mistake as a permanent Easter egg. Have you ever wondered why a game released in 2018 has really amazing-looking windows? If you actually stop swinging for a second and crawl along a skyscraper, especially at night, the level of detail is kind of mind-blowing. You can actually see the interiors of office buildings through the windows. PCs, files, desks, chairs, shelving units, all bathed in warm lighting that makes the city feel lived in and massive. It creates the perfect illusion that millions of people are working inside these buildings right now. But here's the secret. It's all a massive lie. If the game actually tried to build real, 3D rooms with real chairs and desks behind every window, your PS4 would probably have caught on fire trying to process it all. There's just too many objects to draw. So, the developers used a brilliant cheat called interior mapping. Think of it like a magic 3D sticker. In reality, that window is completely flat. It's just a 2D picture of a room pasted onto the glass. But the game uses a special code to trick your eyes. When you move Spider-Man to the left, the picture on the glass automatically shifts to show you the right side of the room. When you move up, it tilts to show you the floor. It mimics exactly how a real room would look if you peeked inside, creating a perfect optical illusion of depth. Your brain thinks you're looking into a deep office space, but you're actually just staring at a flat texture that knows exactly where you're standing. It's such a cool illusion that players don't even notice, and it looks amazing as well. We've talked about the graphics and the physics, but let's talk about a detail so subtle you probably heard it without even realizing it. It's a little trick the audio team pulled off called the breath-based dialogue system. Usually in open-world games, if your character is running a marathon while talking on the phone, they sound totally chill, like they're sitting in a comfortable chair. And that's because, well, the actor was sitting in a chair. But Insomniac realized that made no sense for Spider-Man. He's swinging 40 miles per hour, diving off skyscrapers, and fighting crime. He shouldn't sound relaxed, he should sound winded. So the lead actor, Yuri Lowenthal, actually had to record every single line of the game's script twice. First, he recorded a calm version, standing still in the booth. Then he had to record an exerted version, where he had to act while panting, straining, and sounding like he just ran up 10 flights of stairs. It was physically exhausting work, effectively doubling the workload for the entire script. But here's the crazy part. The game engine acts like a DJ, mixing these tracks in real time. The game constantly watches your controller inputs. If you're standing still on a rooftop looking at the view, the game plays the calm file. But the second you press the trigger to start swinging or wall running, the audio engine instantly and seamlessly crossfades to the exerted file mid-sentence. It's an insane amount of extra effort that grounds the superhero fantasy, making you feel the physical toll of being Spider-Man. When the advanced suit debuted as the primary costume for 2018's Marvel Spider-Man, it looked strikingly different from the established versions that fans had seen for decades. Unlike the suits worn by the most famous Spider-Man, like the Tobey Maguire suit in 2002, which featured a vibrant, comic-accurate red and blue with raised silver webbing and a small black spider logo, or even the original comic classic suit, defined by its simple cloth material and iconic black spider, the advanced suit introduced a dramatic overhaul. It used a lighter, more athletic shade of red and a heavier dose of blue. But the biggest visual change was the giant, segmented white spider emblem. This suit change wasn't just a visual choice, but it had a deeper role. It was actually integral to the story. In the game's lore, this white material we see on Spidey's suit isn't just paint, but a specialized carbon fiber weave suggested by Dr. Octavius, who added protective armor to the new suit after the old one was destroyed, making it a functional piece of armor and a visual representation of Peter's dual life as a hero and a scientist. This unique creation moment further ties the suit directly to the main narrative, as it is designed and fabricated in Octavius Industries during a period when Peter is desperately trying to balance his time between being Spider-Man and being Otto's assistant. The suit represents the peak of their trusting partnership and is, therefore, a constant visual reminder of their bond right up until the point of Otto's heartbreaking descent into villainy, giving the suit an unintended, tragic layer of narrative significance. Voice acting in Spider-Man 2018 feels so natural and emotionally grounded to the point where it often feels less like a video game and more like a high-budget animated film, with performances that sell every joke, every quiet moment, and every emotional hit. Insomniac had a really difficult task on their hands when casting Spider-Man, because they weren't just looking for a voice. They needed someone who could play the role as a Peter Parker who is more mature. When we talk about the absolute goats of voice acting, it's really a toss-up between Troy Baker and the legendary Yuri Lowenthal. This man didn't just voice a character, he defined an entire generation. We grew up watching him transform as Ben 10, rewind time as the Prince of Persia, and command armies as Marth in Fire Emblem. He's the goofy Yosuke Hanamura in Persona 4, the mysterious Dainsleif in Genshin Impact, and he even wielded the power of Grayskull as He-Man in the 2021 series. With a resume that huge, he was the perfect pick for Insomniac's mature Peter Parker. Another interesting coincidence to notice is that in a cutscene where Spidey asks her on a rooftop, "Now that you quit smoking, what do you tell people when you come up here?" If you are a gaming nerd like me, you'll notice he's also the one who voiced Smoke from Mortal Kombat 1 in 2023. Although it's only a coincidence, it's a cool detail, and the fact that he played so many different types of characters. You know how the chemistry between Spider-Man and Captain Yuri Watanabe feels incredibly natural, especially when Spidey is doing his gravelly Spider-Cop voice just to annoy her. That's because the voice actor for Spider-Man, Yuri Lowenthal, and the voice actress for Captain Yuri, Tara Platt, are married in real life, adding a hilarious meta layer where a man named Yuri is recording lines for a character named Yuri. So the jokes between the couple aren't really acting. They're just two people with real chemistry bouncing off of each other naturally. We first see this spark when Spidey swings in to help her team take down Kingpin, but the ultimate proof of their bond comes later when he playfully asks, "Do you love me?" And she just straight up says, "I tolerate you." That is totally a real married couple talking. If you watch behind the scenes clips of them recording, you can actually see them playfully bickering in the booth, proving that the captain's annoyance at Spider-Cop wasn't acting. It was just Tara dealing with her husband. This connection makes the story in Spider-Man 2 so much more emotional, because Yuri returns as the vigilante Wraith, leading to a dramatic showdown where a real-life husband and wife actually have to go head-to-head. And get this, they're also anime legends, famously voicing Sasuke and Tamari in Naruto, proving that whether they're saving New York or the Hidden Leaf Village, their chemistry is just unmatched. Marvel's Spider-Man is one of those games that redefined the superhero game genre, setting a new gold standard for open-world design by seamlessly blending cinematic presentation with a living, breathing recreation of New York City we've never seen before. The web-swinging story, the Spider-Man costumes, and even the characters. Insomniac Games nailed it perfectly. But if you look under the hood, the story of how this game was made is just as crazy as the game itself. It was actually Sony who first approached Insomniac about working with Marvel. After Insomniac agreed, Marvel asked them what property they would like to work on. Insomniac's employee, Brian Intihar, actually suggested that they should develop a Spider-Man game. As a result, Brian was appointed as the creative director for the project. With greater suggestions comes greater responsibilities. The most surprising thing about Spider-Man 2018 is that it was actually the first licensed game that Insomniac made in over 22 years, meaning it was the first time they stepped away from their own original creations to tackle a universe they didn't own. When they announced it at Sony's E3 press conference in June 2016, the pressure was instantly massive, yet they still managed to deliver a masterpiece on their very first attempt. To understand why this was revolutionary, you have to look at the dark ages of superhero gaming. If you grew up playing the older Spider-Man titles, you remember the cloud-swinging mechanic. In those games, developers used a cheat code for physics. When you pressed the swing button, the web simply shot straight up into the sky and attached to thin air. You could be swinging above a flat park or the ocean, and Spidey would still swing as if he were hanging from the moon. It felt weightless and, frankly, a little fake. Insomniacs have decided that if you can't see it, you can't swing from it. They wrote code that constantly shoots invisible lasers to scan the city while you play. Every time you press or hold the R2 trigger, the game instantly calculates geometry to find a real, physical attachment point, like a building corner, a crane, or a lamppost. If there's nothing there, you don't swing, you fall. A perfect example of this is that you cannot web swing over open water in the game. This simple change turned Spider-Man from a floating character into a weighted object on a pendulum. That's why the movement feels so good. When you dive from a skyscraper and catch a web at the last second, it feels so realistic. And the game isn't just playing an animation. It calculates the physics, so you actually feel that heavy snap of momentum when you swing. But achieving that level of polish required more than just clever code. It required an army. To pull this off, Insomniac assembled the largest production team in the studio's history at the time, scaling up their workforce specifically to handle the density of this open world. The game spent approximately 4 years in active development, polishing every animation, texture, and line before finally going gold and hitting manufacturing in July 2018, proving that the long wait was necessary to get the feeling just right. But the developers didn't just want realistic physics, they wanted to create a whole new Spider-Man universe. But the main question was which version of Spider-Man to choose from, which cinematic universe to follow. Instead, they were given a blank check to start their own universe, Earth 1048, which was not tied to any already created universe, which also gave free hand to Insomniac to test out a few things without the fear of breaking established canon or confusing fans with conflicting movie timelines. To understand just how important that freedom was, you have to look at the crowded multiverse they decided to ignore. If they had followed the movies, they would have been stuck in one of 3 very specific lanes. First, you have the Sam Raimi trilogy on Earth 96283, defined by Tobey Maguire's classic, struggling photographer. Then you have the Amazing Spider-Man films on Earth 120703, where Andrew Garfield played a grief-stricken, slightly darker hero, haunted by the loss of Gwen Stacy. And finally, you have the massive shadow of the MCU on Earth 199999, where Tom Holland plays the Rookie Avenger, a high school kid who is often defined by his mentorship under Tony Stark and his reliance on Stark tech. But on Earth 1048, Insomniac flipped the script on all of them. They didn't give us an origin story. Fans have gotten bored with the origin story of Spider-Man and have simply gotten bored with waiting for the hero to actually become a hero. And this time, they didn't give us a high school student. This Peter Parker is a 23-year-old veteran who has already been wearing the mask for 8 years. He is in his prime. He isn't snapping blurry photos for the Daily Bugle anymore. He's a fully qualified scientist, working in a lab alongside Dr. Otto Octavius. This shift in age and career completely changes the gameplay and story. Because he is an experienced adult, there is no learning curve or training wheels protocol. There is no Uncle Ben death scene to watch for the 100th time, and crucially, no Iron Man is coming to save him. Peter Parker designs his own gadgets, builds his own advanced suits, and mentors others rather than being mentored. By creating Earth 1048, Insomniac gave us the most competent, self-sufficient version of Peter Parker we had seen in years, one who had finally grown up. Spider-Man not only paid tribute to iconic game characters like Nico Bellic, but also to the legendary supernatural defenders of New York cinema. The Ghostbusters Firehouse is a fantastic example of Insomniac's attention to New York's pop culture history. The famous firehouse from the Ghostbusters movies is a real, functioning fire station in New York City called Hook and Ladder Company 8. It served as the Ghostbusters headquarters in the 1984 film and its sequels, where they stored the Ecto-1 and the containment unit. Because the game's map is such a faithful recreation of Manhattan, the developers included this iconic building exactly where it stands in real life. While Spider-Man doesn't have a specific voice line referencing the movies, likely due to copyright, the building itself is the Easter egg. However, the building is a near-perfect visual replica of the movie headquarters, complete with the distinct brickwork and arched entrance. The wink to the fans is hidden on the back wall of the building. If you swing round to the rear or check the walls, you'll find ghost graffiti that looks suspiciously like the Ghostbusters logo ghost, confirming the reference. You can locate the famous Ghostbusters firehouse in the Tribeca district of the game map, specifically near the southern map border where it meets the financial district, sitting on a street corner where its classic red brick design and arched entryway stand out distinctly against the surrounding modern glass skyscrapers. The best part is that this landmark is unlocked from the very start. As soon as you finish the opening Kingpin tutorial and the city opens up for free roaming, you can swing directly to it, even if the map area for Tribeca is still fogged out because you haven't repaired the local surveillance tower yet. The building is physically present, so you can simply swing there blindly and find it if you know where to look. But the tributes don't stop with just a funny failed attempt. The game actually lets you live out the real action too. Spider-Man 2 is considered not just the best Spider-Man movie, but one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. In Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, there is an iconic scene where Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker has to stop a runaway subway train before it flies off the tracks. He rips off his mask, shoots webs everywhere to anchor himself, and then literally holds back the entire train with just his raw strength. You can see the pain on his face, his suit tearing, his muscles screaming. It is just pure, selfless heroism. And the way it ends, with the passengers gently carrying his unconscious body like a hero, it is absolute perfection. That one scene is a big reason why Spider-Man 2 isn't just called the best Spider-Man movie, but one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. Near the end of the game, players engage in a brutal boss fight against Mr. Negative, Martin Lee, that takes place entirely inside a speeding subway train. Near the end of the game, after battling Mr. Negative inside the subway, the train spirals out of control, and that is when the real reference hits. Just like Tobey Maguire in the movie, Peter has to stop the runaway train before it crashes, shooting massive web lines to the tunnel walls, and using every ounce of his strength to physically hold it back. Insomniac truly gave us a Christmas surprise with the webbed suit, the iconic Tobey Maguire suit from the Sam Raimi trilogy. After fans were disappointed it wasn't in the initial DLC packs, Insomniac just dropped it as a free update for everyone. You don't need to complete a crazy challenge or pay for a DLC. Insomniac gave this suit for free after the 1.13 update, with the release of their DLC, Silver Lining. Along with this, there is also a black webbed suit, which is a direct reference to the symbiote-infected suit worn by Tobey Maguire in the 2007 movie Spider-Man 3. Once updated, you can simply go into your suit menu, and the web suit will be there, waiting for you to equip it for free. But if you really want to embrace the cringier side of that era, the game has a hilarious reference to the infamous Emo Peter dance from Spider-Man 3. If you walk down the street and press square to greet civilians, Spidey will sometimes point at them with finger guns in the exact same awkward way Tobey Maguire did while strutting down the street. It is the perfect way to make things uncomfortable for everyone involved. Speaking of nostalgia, we can't forget the tribute to the internet's absolute favorite meme. Pizza time. In Spider-Man 2, there's a legendary sequence where Peter struggles to keep his job at Joe's Pizza. Mr. Aziz gives him a stack of pizzas and a frantic deadline. Screaming, "Go!" Peter has to swing across the city to deliver them before the timer runs out, famously arriving late and uttering the defeated line, "Pizza time." Insomniac honored this stressful memory in an amazing way. In one of the DLCs, The Heist, there's a specific story moment from the first chapter in which Peter calls his favorite pizza place, Eddie's Pizza, and orders his usual extra pepperoni for rooftop delivery. Peter picks up the pizza on a rooftop, thanks Eddie, who asks for a shout-out on social media, and sits down at the rooftop to eat the pizza, playfully uttering the words, "Pizza time." A hilarious, direct reference to Tobey Maguire's iconic and meme-worthy delivery line from Spider-Man 2. If you played Spider-Man 2 on the PS2, you definitely remember those infamous, anxiety-inducing pizza delivery missions. You know, the ones where you had to race across the city on a scooter while that incredibly catchy, loopable Italian tune drilled itself into your brain. Well, Insomniac obviously played them too, because if you listen closely outside a specific pizza shop near the southwest coast of the financial district, You can actually hear that exact pizza delivery theme playing in the background. It is faint, but unmistakable, a distorted accordion version of Funisula, that will instantly trigger PTSD for anyone who ever failed a delivery because they hit a curb. You can find this shop and hear the legendary track at this location. If you are dedicated enough to complete 100% of the game, clearing every district, finding every backpack, and stopping every crime, you unlock the Undies suit. It is literally just Peter Parker in his Spider-Man mask and a pair of boxers. The visual alone is hilarious, but the suit actually triggers a unique reaction from the game mechanics themselves. If you walk on the street wearing this, the social feed in the menu updates with confused New Yorkers posting about seeing a naked Spider-Man, and some NPCs will even ask, "Did you lose a bet?" The public's reaction is incredibly detailed. Citizens will stop in their tracks to stare in disbelief, or pull out their phones to snap photos of the web-slinger's questionable fashion choice. His suit's inclusion leads to one of the most comedic cutscenes in the game during a dinner date mission with Mary Jane Watson. As MJ notices a crime alert involving an Oscorp CFO, Peter prepares to leap into action, prompting MJ to ask if he just left his clothes on the kitchen floor. Peter, appearing in his mask and underwear, asks where he should leave them, to which MJ dryly responds that the couch is fine, before Peter leaps out the window. Even the smallest visual details are carefully crafted to maintain the joke. The boxers themselves feature a Spider-Man head pattern, proving that even when he is almost undressed, Peter is always on brand. This suit serves as both a badge of honor for completionists and a testament to the game's lighthearted, friendly neighborhood spirit. But the Undies suit is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to fan service. The game is packed with references that pay homage to Spider-Man's 60-year history across comics and film. And honestly, the attention to detail is insane. For the hardcore comic fans, you've got the bombastic Bagman, which was added as a gift in a later update. It's a total deep-cut reference to Amazing Spider-Man number 258, where Peter had to borrow a spare Fantastic Four suit and wear a brown paper bag over his head to hide his face. Then there's the Spider-Punk suit, unlocked once you hit level 16, featuring a denim vest and a spiked mask. Its rock-out power blasts enemies back with a wave of righteous sound, which is just peak Spider-Man energy. If you're into that dark, gritty aesthetic, the Noir suit is available early at level 3. It's inspired by the 1930s era and comes with the sound of silence power, so enemies can't call for backup. And of course, we can't forget the MCU love. The Stark suit from Homecoming unlocks at level 9. At the same time, the Iron Spider from Infinity War becomes available at level 31, complete with those iconic mechanical iron arms that make you feel like a literal Avenger. Even the smallest visual details are carefully crafted to maintain the joke or the legacy. The boxers on the Undies suit feature a Spider-Man head pattern, proving that even when he is almost undressed, Peter is always on brand. It is a total moment of sigh, a deep breath of relief for anyone who loves open-world games, to realize that the entire map of Manhattan is fully unlocked from the very first minute. Unlike almost every other open-world game, looking at you, Grand Theft Auto or Assassin's Creed, there are no invisible walls, no bridges closed due to terrorist threat messages, and no desynchronization warnings if you wander too far. Once you finish that high-octane opening mission at Fisk Tower, and Peter says he needs to get to work, the island is your playground. You can swing from the south all the way to the top of Harlem in the north, without seeing a single loading screen. This level of trust from the developers lets you set your own pace. You don't have to follow the story just to earn the right to see the rest of the city. While the physical space is open, the map data is hidden behind a fog of war. To see the details of each district, the icons for backpacks, landmarks, and side missions, you have to fix the Oscorp surveillance towers. The Devil's Breath Crisis serves as the terrifying climax of the game, transforming New York from a sunny playground into a quarantined nightmare. Originally developed by Oscorp under the codename GR27, it was never meant to be a weapon. It was a desperate attempt by Norman Osborn to create a cure for his dying son, Harry. However, The serum was dangerously volatile, and when a vengeful Dr. Octopus released it into the city's atmosphere, it caused a mass pandemic, leading to martial law, Sable agents patrolling the streets, and thousands of infected citizens. This is a major shift in the story of the game. However, among all these players, there's a cool reference hidden. The scientist who created this deadly virus is named Dr. Morgan Michaels. To the casual player, he seems like just another generic Oscorp employee, but that name is actually a massive Easter egg. In the Marvel Comics, Morgan Michaels is the specific alias used by Dr. Michael Morbius, better known to the world as Morbius, the living vampire. Morbius has also been trending as a meme for quite some time now. The scientist, Dr. Morgan Michaels, isn't exactly a vampire that drinks blood in this game. Insomniac designed his character model to be incredibly pale, gaunt, and dark-eyed, a deliberate visual nod to his vampiric alter ego. It's a brilliant detail that suggests that while Spider-Man was fighting a virus, a legendary supernatural anti-hero was hiding in plain sight the entire time. The black suit from Spider-Man 3 is one of the most legendary superhero costumes of all time. It wasn't just a cool new look, it was a character in itself. A sleek alien skin that gave Peter Parker incredible power but slowly poisoned his mind, turning the friendly neighborhood hero into an aggressive, arrogant jerk and giving the internet the gift of Bully Maguire. Because it is so iconic, fans begged Insomniac to include it in the 2018 game, but the developers deliberately left it out. They weren't ignoring us. They were secretly building the game's biggest Easter egg right under our noses. If you look closely during the mission where MJ sneaks into Norman Osborn's secret penthouse lab, you uncover the dark truth. You find Harry Osborn floating in a green stasis tank, but he isn't alone. Clinging to him is a living, black webbing that reacts violently when Norman touches the glass. This was the massive reveal. In this universe, the symbiote wasn't a random alien from space, but a biological cure Oscorp created to keep Harry alive. Insomniac held the suit back so that this specific Easter egg would set the stage for the future. This secret finally pays off in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, where the symbiote leaves Harry to bond with Peter, saving his life and finally giving us the gameplay we waited 5 years for. You get access to terrifying powers, shooting massive black tendrils, picking up enemies in midair, and entering an unstoppable surge mode. But just like the movies warned us, it comes at a terrible cost. As you play, Peter stops making jokes, his voice turns cold, and his fighting becomes so brutal that he terrifies his own friends, proving that the Easter egg in Norman's lab was a warning all along. The Sinister Six serve as the terrifying climax of Marvel's Spider-Man, a nightmare team-up of Electro, Vulture, Rhino, Scorpion, and Mr. Negative, all led by Dr. Octopus. Their massive breakout from the Raft prison is one of the biggest plot twists in the game, forcing Peter to fight a gauntlet of 6 legendary bosses back-to-back before the final showdown. But did you know that the game actually told us exactly who was on the team and what they were planning hours before they ever broke out? The first clue was hidden in plain sight during the Halloween party mission at Empire State University. As you walk through the crowd, you see party guests dressed up as Vulture, Electro, Rhino, and Scorpion. At the time, it just seemed like fun world building to show which villains Spidey had fought in the past, but it was actually a foreshadowing checklist of exactly who was about to return to destroy the city. However, the most chilling spoiler was hidden right under Peter's nose in Dr. Octavius's laboratory. Most players only visit the lab to solve the circuit puzzles or listen to Otto talk, but if you pay attention to the whiteboards in the background, they tell a tragic story of corruption. In the early chapters, the boards are filled with optimistic notes about prosthetics and helping humanity. But as Otto's mind starts to deteriorate from his neurological disease, the writing changes. If you look closely at the diagrams in the later chapters, you aren't looking at medical equipment anymore. You can literally see detailed blueprints for Vulture's precision flight gear, upgrades for Electro's harness, and corrosion concepts for Rhino's armor. This proves that Otto wasn't just fixing their gear as he claimed, he was weaponizing the villains and building the Sinister Six's arsenal right in front of Peter. and we were all too busy fixing robot arms to notice. But the blueprints aren't the only thing hiding in plain sight. The handwriting itself actually tells the story of Otto being pushed into madness. If you pay close attention during your visits to the lab, you can literally watch his sanity crumble in real time just by looking at how he writes. At the start of the game, his notes are super neat and organized, mostly focused on helping people. But as that neural interface starts corrupting his brain, the writing physically degrades, becoming chaotic and messy. By the time you visit him for the last time, the board isn't even about science anymore. It's covered in angry scribbles and crazy rants about destroying Norman Osborn. It's such a crazy level of detailing that it hints that Dr. Otto was already gone long before he put on those mechanical arms. Everyone talks about the legendary Sinister Six reveal, but nobody notices the insane attention to detail during the raft breakout mission regarding the villain's cells. Most games would just spawn enemies from random doors and call it a day, but Insomniac actually built specific, logical containment units for every single boss. If you slow down during the chase, which is hard when you're dodging rockets, you will notice that Rhino doesn't just walk out of a door. He bursts out of a massive, heavily reinforced vault that is triple the size of a normal cell because, well, he's a giant rhino. Meanwhile, Vulture and Scorpion are released from specialized, high-tech isolation pods, specifically designed to neutralize their suits. The level of continuity is actually scary, because you can tell exactly who broke out of where just by looking at the destruction. The smash marks on Rhino's cell are completely different from the electrical scorch marks around Electro's containment unit. It proves that the developers didn't just treat this as a level. They mapped out the entire prison break like a movie scene, ensuring that every villain has a designated home before they decided to tear the place down. Miles Morales becoming the second Spider-Man is one of the most exciting parts of the game, but the spider that gave him his powers hides a massive secret written right on its back. During the stealth mission, Step Into My Parlor, where Mary Jane breaks into Norman Osborn's secret penthouse lab, she accidentally knocks over a container of genetically modified spiders. One of them hitches a ride on her jacket and eventually bites Miles, but if you use photo mode to zoom in on that specific spider, you will see the number 42 clearly painted on its abdomen. The number is a huge deal for several reasons. It honors Jackie Robinson, but more importantly, it is a crucial plot point that connects directly to the Spider-Verse films and comics, referencing Earth 42, the dimension where the radioactive spider that bit the main Miles Morales originated. This tiny detail signals the start of the entire Spider-Verse expansion and leads directly into the standalone Miles Morales game. But the craziest part is who the spider didn't bite. That spider hitched a ride on Mary Jane's shoulder for the entire journey out of the lab and all the way to the feast center. It had every chance to bite her. It was literally sitting on her neck, but it didn't. It waited until it saw Miles, and then immediately crawled off to bite him instead. This fuels the fan theory that the spider isn't just random. It actually decides who is worthy of the power, choosing Miles to be the next hero while completely ignoring MJ. If you think you've mastered Spider-Man's combat, one villain is waiting to prove you wrong: Taskmaster. You can't just find him on the map. You have to earn his attention. As you progress through the story, mysterious orange icons will appear on rooftops, offering Taskmaster challenges, like defusing bombs, chasing drones, or stealth takedowns. These challenges in themselves could be very challenging at first. You have to complete enough of these challenges to impress him, and once you do, he won't just send you a message. He will physically ambush you out of nowhere while you're swinging through the city, dragging you into a surprise boss fight right there on the street. But once that fight starts, you quickly realize that this isn't just a standard battle. Insomniac programmed Taskmaster with a unique AI system that is honestly terrifying. The gameplay secret is that he watches how you fight and adapts in real time. If you get lazy and try to spam the same move repeatedly, just like mashing the punch button or throwing web bombs over and over, Taskmaster will literally learn it mid-fight. He'll start catching your punches before they land, or dodging your gadgets perfectly, forcing you to constantly switch up your attacks to hit him. It is a brilliant gameplay mechanic, because he's effectively downloading your moves and using his photographic reflexes to counter them, exactly like he does in the comics. Spider-Man isn't just about fighting crime. The game is packed with versatile side quests that flesh out Peter Parker's history, and one of the best is the backpack collectibles. Scattered all over Manhattan are 55 old backpacks that Peter webbed up years ago to store his high school gear and personal keepsakes. Hunting them down is a nostalgia trip, unlocking items like his first web shooters, old homework, and failed prototypes. But one backpack in Hell's Kitchen holds a piece of paper that connects Spidey to another legendary vigilante. Inside, you find a crinkled business card that reads, "Nelson and Murdoch, attorneys at law." Marvel fans instantly know that this belongs to Matt Murdock, the blind lawyer who secretly fights crime as Daredevil. But the real Easter egg is in Peter's confused commentary when he examines it. He says, "A blind lawyer gave this to me." Wait, if he's blind, how did he know I was Spider-Man? This hilarious line confirms a massive detail. Daredevil didn't need eyes to see the suit. He used his heightened radar sense to hear Peter's heartbeat or smell the chemicals in his web fluid, completely seeing through Spidey's disguise without Peter even realizing his cover was blown. Daredevil's favorite bar from both the comics and the Netflix show makes an appearance. If you swing through the gritty streets of Hell's Kitchen, you can actually find Josie's bar sitting on a street corner. It's the legendary dive bar where Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson usually go to drown their sorrows. And while you can't go inside to order a drink, the sign is a perfect replica that confirms the Devil of Hell's Kitchen definitely operates in this neighborhood. But that business card is just the tip of the iceberg, because these backpacks are basically a hidden museum of foreshadowing. If you dig through the rest of them, you'll find a vial of sand that Peter is terrified to open because he's not sure if it will accidentally set Sandman free. And he was right to be worried, because Flint Marko actually returns as the massive, city-destroying opening boss in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. You also find a jagged shard from Rhino's horn that Peter chipped off during a brutal fight to figure out his armor's weakness. Knowledge that became crucial later when Rhino returned to terrorize the city in Spider-Man Miles Morales. The references go even deeper, with a piece of Mysterio's helmet that actually helped Peter design his own eye lenses, and a fragment of Shocker's suit that taught him how to insulate his costume against electricity. It isn't just about the villains though. The backpacks also hide hilarious details about his personal life, like his old, thick-rimmed glasses that he stopped wearing after the spider bite gave him perfect vision. He told Aunt May he got laser eye surgery with prize money. He even kept his failed inventions, like a prototype spider signal that was way too hot to hold, and those iconic underarm webs from the early comics, which he admits looked cool but were totally useless for gliding, proving that this Spider-Man has been fighting, failing, and improvising for 8 years before we ever picked up the controller. Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 also pays a homage to Wakanda in a way that evolves beautifully throughout the series. If you swing through the Midtown district near the United Nations building, you can discover the Wakandan embassy, distinguishable by the nation's flag flying proudly outside. When Peter Parker snaps a photo of this landmark, he confirms that Black Panther is active in this universe, and that the two heroes are on surprisingly good terms. Casually musing, the Wakandan embassy, King T'Challa, I wonder if he ever got that fruit basket I sent. The tribute gets even deeper in the spin-off games, where the street is renamed Bozeman Way to honor Chadwick Boseman. In Spider-Man Miles Morales, the developers added a touching interactive detail. While Peter can only stand respectfully at the doors, Miles can actually press a button to perform the iconic Wakanda Forever salute, a subtle but powerful distinction that highlights the cultural connection between Miles and the Wakandan legacy. Did you know Insomniac used a giant teleporting dog to solve a major legal problem? First, you need to know about Lockjaw. He is one of the weirdest and most lovable characters in Marvel history, a 2,000-pound bulldog with a glowing tuning fork on his head that lets him teleport across dimensions. He usually hangs out on the moon, protecting the Inhumans, but the developers needed him for a very specific reason on Earth. When making the game, Insomniac wanted to include the famous Charging Bull statue on Wall Street, but strict copyright laws actually prevented them from using the real-life sculpture. So, instead of leaving the spot empty, they replaced it with a massive bronze statue of Lockjaw, standing in the same spot in the financial district. It is a brilliant way to dodge a lawsuit while confirming the Inhumans exist in this universe. Plus, if you take a picture of it, Peter cracks the perfect joke. The Inhumans teleporting dog. I wonder if he's housebroken. When this game first came out, everyone was wondering the same thing. Are the Avengers going to show up? I mean, how can Marvel make a massive open-world game without at least mentioning Earth's mightiest heroes? Well, even though Iron Man and Cap don't actually appear to help you save the city, the developers made sure their presence was impossible to miss. If you swing over to the Upper East Side, you'll find the Avengers Tower, which is the single tallest building in the entire map. It is hands down the coolest spot in the game, because it gives you enough height to dive off and perform endless air tricks and stunts before you hit the ground. But before you take the plunge, you have to climb to the very top signal light. Doing this unlocks the Hero for Hire trophy, and it also triggers a hilarious secret interaction. Once you perch on the edge, Peter looks around the empty tower and jokes, "They're never around to use this place. Maybe they're on the West Coast." This is a brilliant line because it not only nods to the famous West Coast Avengers comics, but it also gives a funny excuse for why Spidey is fighting solo. He even considers asking Tony Stark for a job while he's up there, but quickly realizes that the Avengers probably don't pay, proving that even with billionaire friends, Peter Parker is still broke. The most emotional Easter egg in the entire game is the cameo from the man who started it all. We all know Stan Lee was the genius who created the Marvel Universe we know today, and he became a legend for his constant appearances in the films. We saw him as the oblivious librarian, listening to classical music while Spidey fought the lizard in The Amazing Spider-Man, the shaky-handed barber who cut Thor's hair in Ragnarok, and even the FedEx driver looking for Tony Stank in Civil War. He was the king of these hilarious, light-hearted moments. But Insomniac Games decided to do something different. They gave him perhaps his best and most heartbreaking appearance ever. Interestingly, he also makes an appearance in this game. Early in the story, Peter and MJ meet up at Mick's Diner to awkwardly talk about their broken relationship. As MJ leaves, the short-order cook walks out to check the receipt, and when the camera turns, it's none other than Stan Lee himself. But instead of a joke, he delivers a line that hits you right in the feels. He looks at MJ and says, "I love seeing you two together. You were always my favorite." This wasn't just a random line. It was a beautiful, meta moment where the creator of Spider-Man was literally giving his blessing to the couple he created over 50 years ago. Since Stan sadly passed away just a few months after the game came out, rewatching this scene now is a guaranteed tearjerker for every single Spider-Man fan. But the developers made sure he would never be forgotten. If you visit that same diner in the sequel, Spider-Man Miles Morales, you'll find a massive bronze statue of Stan Lee standing right outside the door, forever watching over the city and the heroes he helped create. The game has some insane blink and miss details that many fans don't notice because they're too busy swinging through the air at 60 miles per hour. But if you actually stop and walk on the sidewalks, you'll see that the city is reacting to your actions in real time. And the best example of this is the Daily Bugle newspaper dispensers, found on almost every street corner. Most games just paste a generic news texture on these boxes and call it a day, but in Spider-Man, the headlines literally change as you progress through the story. If you check them at the start, they display headlines about Kingpin's arrest. But after major missions like the Shocker Chase or the Prison Breakout, the front page updates to reflect exactly what just happened, often with a spin that blames Spider-Man for the chaos. There are actually 28 unique newspapers to collect throughout the game's timeline, and while finding them all doesn't give you a trophy or a new suit, it unlocks the full articles in your collection's menu. Reading these provides hilarious sub-headlines and deep lore that you can't see anywhere else, making New York feel like a living, breathing place where your battles actually make the morning news. Did you know that throughout the entire main story, someone is actually stalking you? While you're busy swinging around saving New York, the game constantly teases the feeling that you're being watched from the shadows. Well, guess who it was? It turns out to be Peter's most chaotic ex-girlfriend, Black Cat. Throughout the base game, she leaves little cat dolls at crime scenes that trigger stakeout missions, where she flirts with you over the phone while you hunt for her hidden gear. If you complete them all, you track her to a hidden tunnel, only to find she's already vanished, leaving behind the slick dark suit as a consolation prize. But this was just a warm-up for her proper debut in the Heist DLC, where she finally reveals herself for an adrenaline-pumping chase scene through the subway tunnels that tests your web-swinging skills to the limit. But the craziest part of her return isn't the heist itself, it's the mind games. During the DLC story, Felicia drops a massive bombshell that completely panics Peter. She tricks him into thinking that he has a son. This leads to one of the funniest and most stressful subplots in the series, where Peter has to awkwardly explain to MJ that he might be a father. Although it eventually turns out to be a lie she cooked up to manipulate him, it proves that Black Cat is the only villain who knows how to exploit Peter Parker's sense of responsibility to get exactly what she wants. One of the best things about this game is that it doesn't force us to watch Uncle Ben die again. The story starts 8 years into Peter's career, so the origin story is long gone, but that doesn't mean Uncle Ben is forgotten. In fact, the game hides a beautiful tribute to him that is completely unmarked on the map. If you swing all the way to the northern edge of Harlem, you can find a massive cemetery. Most players just swing right past it, but if you stop and search the graves, you'll find the headstone of Ben Parker. Finding it pops a secret hidden trophy, fittingly called With Great Power. But the real reason to visit is the dialogue. If you interact with the grave, Peter begins a heartbreaking monologue, updating his uncle on Aunt May, MJ, and his life as Spider-Man. It is a quiet, unscripted moment that reminds you that even after all these years, that one loss is still the fuel behind every punch Peter throws. Also, you can see the photo of Uncle Ben on Aunt May's desk if you head into her office at the Feast Shelter. It's a heartbreaking little detail, serving as a constant, silent reminder that even though Ben is gone, he is still the reason both Peter and May dedicate their lives to helping others. The game features many hidden Marvel locations that prove Spidey isn't the only hero in town, even if the others didn't make the cut for the main story. If you swing through the gritty streets of Hell's Kitchen, you can find a nondescript building with a dirty window and a faded sign reading Alias Investigations, which is the private detective agency run by Jessica Jones, confirming that offenders are operating in this universe. Moving uptown to Midtown, you can't miss the massive, sleek skyscraper of the Rand Corporation, the billion-dollar company owned by Danny Rand, better known as the Iron Fist. But who cleans up the mess these heroes make? In the financial district, you can find the Department of Damage Control headquarters, a direct nod to the MCU and comics company that specializes in repairing cities after superhero battles. The foreshadowing even extends to the villains. You can find the looming Roxxon Plaza, the headquarters of the corrupt energy giant Roxxon, which serves as a major teaser because they become the main antagonist in the Miles Morales spin-off. But the darkest secret is hidden inside a friendly location. If you look closely at the equipment boxes stacked in Dr. Octavius's lab, they are stamped with AIM, Advanced Idea Mechanics. This subtle detail reveals that the terrorist science organization was secretly funding Otto's descent into madness long before he even put on the mechanical arms. One of the most immersive features in the game is the social feed, but sadly, almost nobody checks it because they're too busy staring at the map. This Twitter-like menu is an absolute goldmine of comedy and world building that updates in real time based on exactly what you're doing. If you stop a crime without taking a hit, citizens will tweet, thanking you for saving the day. But if you accidentally smash a car or cause a traffic jam, they will literally flame you in the comments for destroying the city. The feed also reveals a surprisingly dark side of New York. Wilson Fisk actually has a massive online fan base. While you're out there fighting the inner demons, you will see posts from citizens saying things like, "Fisk would have stopped this," or "Bring back the Kingpin." It shows that many New Yorkers actually preferred the organized crime of Fisk over the total chaos of Mr. Negative, making Peter's victory feel way more complicated. One of the most wholesome, yet easily missed details in the game is the social media presence of John Jameson, JJ's astronaut son. While his dad is busy screaming into a microphone about Spider-Man being a menace, John is actually out here tweeting under the handle JJ in Space, often from an actual space station. Instead of joining the hate train, John's posts are surprisingly sweet. He'll often tweet about how much he loves his dad's passionate talk show, and how glad he is that he can still hear his father's voice even while orbiting the Earth. It adds a whole new dimension to J. Jonah Jameson. He's not just a loud-mouthed conspiracy theorist, he's a proud father whose son is literally a war hero and explorer. But the best part is the cameos hidden in the feed. If you scroll far enough, you can find reports from Ben Urich, the legendary investigative reporter who, in the comics, is famous for uncovering the truth about the Kingpin and Daredevil. You will also see hilarious all-caps rants from J. Jonah Jameson and posts from JJ in Space, which is actually his son, John Jameson, an astronaut. You can even find tweets from Flash Thompson, Peter's former high school bully turned veteran, who claims he knows Spidey personally. In the comics, Flash eventually becomes the host for the Venom symbiote as Agent Venom, and if you visit the second floor of the Feast Center, you can find a job board confirming he's back in town running a veterans job fair.
Good thing my buddy Flash Thompson's doing his best to fix that.
The feed even mirrors real-life internet arguments, with conspiracy theorists debating whether Spider-Man is a man bitten by a spider or a spider that mutated into a man, proving that even in the Marvel Universe, internet trolls never change. Right at the start of the game, before you even swing a single web, the developers hid 2 massive MCU connections on a tiny shelf in Peter's apartment that almost everyone misses. As the camera pans across his messy room, you can see a bunch of sticky notes stuck to a shelf near his bed. Most are just boring reminders about rent, but if you freeze the frame, 2 of them stand out. The first one says, "Call TS back, job offer." Now, who is a billionaire genius with the initials TS that would be offering Peter a job? That is definitely Tony Stark, implying that Iron Man is actively trying to recruit Peter for the Avengers or Stark Industries. But before you rush out of that apartment, take a look at the walls, because Stark isn't the only legend referenced here. Right next to those notes, you can spot a vintage poster for a wrestling match against Crusher Hogan. This is a huge nod to Peter's origin story, referencing the very first fight he ever won before he officially became a hero. The coolest part, you can actually craft and wear that exact wrestling suit later in the game. And the nostalgia trip doesn't stop there. Later in the story, after Peter gets evicted, classic Parker luck, all his stuff gets moved to Otto's lab. If you look around his new desk, you can find a stack of old Daily Bugle front pages. These aren't just random textures. They detail the specific battles where Spidey took down villains like Electro and Vulture years ago, filling in the blanks of the last 8 years of history that we never got to play. But the second note is arguably even cooler. It reads, "RR suit fabric ballistic, call to confirm." The only person Peter would trust with questions about advanced suit fabrics and ballistic science is Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four. This is such a cool detail, because it confirms that not only do these legendary heroes exist in this universe, but Peter is actually friends with them and has them on speed dial for science advice. During the mission, back to school, Spider-Man has to sneak for a massive Halloween costume party at ESU, and while most of the costumes are pretty generic, there is one partygoer who stands out for all the wrong reasons. If you look closely at the crowd, you'll spot a guy wearing a Spider-Man mask and hood, but completely shirtless. This isn't just a random drunk college student. It's actually a hilarious shout-out to internet personality and kinda funny games host, Greg Miller. Greg is famous for his over-the-top hype for the game, and he had a running gag where he would show up to E3 and other events wearing the Spidey mask with absolutely no shirt on. Insomniac Games loved his enthusiasm so much that they immortalized him as an NPC in the actual game. It's such a legendary cameo that even his former employer, IGN, included it in their official Easter egg article, confirming that the shirtless Spidey canon event is literally just Greg Miller crashing a party. And speaking of Empire State University, one of the landmarks you can find in Manhattan is the ESU campus, which is the old alma mater of Peter Parker. But it's not just Peter who walked these halls. In a deep dive into Marvel lore, ESU is the same university attended by Dr. Doom, the Human Torch, Emma Frost, and Eddie Brock. Since Insomniac Games is the legendary developer behind both Spider-Man and the Ratchet & Clank series, he couldn't resist hiding some deep-cut references that only true fans would notice. The coolest one is actually hidden in your moveset. Once you unlock the air trick skill, if you hold triangle and circle while diving and tilt the stick in all 4 directions, Spidey will perform a special stunt called the Spidey McMarks. This is a direct tribute to the Twisty McMarks, a legendary trick you could pull off during the hoverboard races in the original 2002 Ratchet & Clank game. But the references aren't just in the stunts, they're hidden in the background too. During the main mission, First Day, when Miles enters the Feast Center, he bumps into a man struggling with a crossword puzzle who mentions the word quark. While that is obviously a real science term, it's also a sneaky nod to Captain Quark, the bumbling hero from Ratchet & Clank. It's a perfect double entendre that fits Peter's science world while winking at the players who grew up saving the galaxy with a Lombax. Did you know that Marvel's Spider-Man features some of the most insane graphics and animation details ever put into an open-world game? This isn't just about high resolution, it's about a level of polish that borders on obsessiveness. First off, check out the real-time eye reflections. If you jump into photo mode and zoom all the way into Spidey's lenses, they aren't just using a generic city texture. They actually reflect the environment in real time, showing you the specific cars, buildings, and clouds currently around you. And it's not just the eyes. The suit material physics are next level. Every suit reacts to light differently, while the vintage comic suit is cel-shaded to stay shadow-free. The Iron Spider suit uses metallic anisotropy to warp light around its armor plating, just like real metal. But the detail goes even deeper than the suit. We're talking muscle deformation. If you look closely during a punch or swing, you can see Peter's biceps actually flex and contract under the fabric. By the time you reach the final boss fight with Doc Ock, the game adds a layer of sweat and exhaustion. Through the rips in Peter's mask, his skin is realistically covered in dirt, bruises, and sweat that actually gets worse as the fight goes on. The rain physics in the game also has some insane detail. When it's pouring, water doesn't just sit there, it runs down the suit in realistic rivulets. And if you're hanging upside down, the water actually drips up toward gravity. It's these tiny moment of sigh details that make this world feel truly alive. The game uses dynamic FOV and audio. The faster you go, the more the camera pulls back, and the wind noise ramps up. But if you look closely at the animations, Spidey has unique fail-safe moves. If you clip a building, he doesn't just FUD, he'll automatically transition into a wall run or a vault to keep your momentum going. It's these tiny, hidden touches that make you feel like the true Spider-Man. And what makes all of this even crazier is that Insomniac didn't stop at big cinematic moments or flashy visual tech. Some of the most obsessive details are hidden in places players almost never stop to look at. Tiny, everyday interactions that quietly sell the illusion of being Spider-Man. One of the most impressive technical details in Marvel's Spider-Man is how the game handles incoming calls. When Peter receives a phone call while swinging through the city, the attention to detail extends all the way down to the hardware in his hand. If you use photo mode to zoom in on the smartphone screen while he is talking, the display actually shows the correct contact name and a realistic calling interface, rather than a generic or blurred texture. It is a crazy level of detail that most players would never notice during the fast-paced gameplay. Marvel's Spider-Man features a brilliant narrative shift in its fast travel system, reflecting the high stakes of the final act. For the majority of the game, fast traveling involves a series of humorous cutscenes, where Spider-Man awkwardly rides the NYC subway alongside everyday commuters, checking his phone or leaning against the doors. However, once the story reaches the City at War phase, where the Sinister Six have escaped, the Devil's Breath crisis is peaking, and Sable International has placed the city under martial law. These light-hearted subway scenes disappear entirely, because Manhattan has become a dangerous war zone, overrun by escaped convicts and high-tech mercenaries. It would no longer make sense for Peter to be casually riding public transit. The game offers some cool, unique fast travel cutscenes, specifically for this part of the game. One of the most mind-blowing technical details in the game occurs during the encounters with Martin Lee. When the villain transforms into his Mr. Negative persona, his character model shifts into a distinct, inverted color palette that looks like a photographic negative. However, if you enter photo mode during these moments and manually apply the negative filter, the colors flip back, revealing that he is actually shown as the normal, human Martin Lee. This detail makes perfect sense from a design perspective, as it confirms that the Mr. Negative look isn't just a separate skin, but a literal inversion of his base character model's colors. It's a brilliant bit of internal logic that rewards players for experimenting with the game's photography tools. This choice ensures that the transition between his two personalities feels like a supernatural manipulation of light and energy rather than just a costume change. Staying true to the physics of how a real photographic negative works, Marvel's Spider-Man goes the extra mile by rendering its cutscenes entirely in real time rather than using pre-recorded video files. This technical choice ensures that the specific suit you choose to wear, whether it's the high-tech advanced suit, the homemade outfit, or even a cel-shaded comic skin, is the exact one Peter wears during every emotional story beat. Because the game isn't just playing a movie file, the high-detail character models used in gameplay are the same ones delivering the dramatic performances in the cinematics. For example, if you're wearing a suit with metallic surfaces, like the Iron Spider, you'll see the actual environment and characters reflected on your armor during a conversation. Even more impressive is how the game handles damage. If Peter's suit is scuffed or torn from a boss fight right before a cutscene triggers, those specific battle scars stay visible on his model throughout the entire scene. By avoiding pre-rendered videos, Insomniac ensures that the transition between your high-speed swinging and the game's cinematic storytelling is completely seamless, keeping you fully immersed in your personal version of Spider-Man's journey. In keeping with Peter Parker's strict no-kill rule, Insomniac implemented a brilliant hidden mechanic to ensure Spider-Man never accidentally ends a life during combat. If you're fighting on a roof and knock an enemy over the edge, you might expect them to plummet to the street below. But if you look closely, the game triggers an automatic safety feature. As soon as they fall, they're webbed to the wall. This detail is so seamless that most players never even notice it happening in the heat of battle. While in older games, enemies would simply disappear or hit the ground. Here, they remain physically stuck to the architecture. You can actually climb down the side of the skyscraper after a fight to find the enemies you kicked off safely dangling hundreds of feet above the pavement. It's a fantastic piece of world building that reinforces Spider-Man's morality through gameplay mechanics, ensuring that no matter how aggressive your combos get, he always stays the friendly neighborhood hero. Let's be honest, the MJ stealth missions really test your patience. Because players often find them a bit slow, most just rush through them to get back to the action. But if you were speedrunning the Don't Touch the Art mission at Fisk's auction house, you missed a massive piece of foreshadowing hiding in plain sight. If you sneak to the back of the gallery and look near the podium, you can spot a display case holding a massive, diamond-tipped cane. That isn't just a fancy walking stick, it's the Kingpin's iconic weapon from the comics. which he famously uses to hide high-tech gadgets like lasers and sleeping gas right under the hero's noses. But that isn't the only personal item on display. You can also find a massive cello that MJ notes is named Vanessa. This is a direct reference to Vanessa Fisk, Wilson's wife, who is a major character in the comics and the Daredevil TV show, serving as the one soft spot in Kingpin's cold heart. While inspecting the stolen treasures in Fisk's private estate, MJ can examine a specific box of cigars on a display table. If you interact with it, she notes that they are rare, hand-rolled cigars from Symkaria. To the average player, that's just random flavor text. But Marvel fans know that Symkaria is the fictional European monarchy that is home to none other than Silver Sable. This tiny detail was actually the game's way of teasing her arrival, long before she shows up to turn New York into a military zone. It hints that Kingpin had deep business ties with her country, perfectly setting the stage for her mercenary army to take over the city later in the story. It even foreshadows the DLC, Silver Lining, where MJ literally travels to Symkaria to report on the civil war there. In that expansion, Silver Sable returns to New York specifically because her home country of Symkaria is embroiled in a brutal civil war. Kingpin, possessing these high-end exports, suggests he was likely funding the very conflict that eventually forces Sable to team up with Spider-Man to save her people. It turns a simple box of cigars into a major clue about the geopolitical crisis that defines the end of the entire saga. There's a rather interesting glitch that allows you to break the entire game and enter the upside down of New York, letting you swim beneath the city streets. This was popularized by a YouTuber named Eadpot, who found that if you go to a specific pier on the edge of the map and squeeze Spider-Man into a tight corner near the fence and the water, the collision detection completely fails. Instead of hitting the wall, Spidey will clip straight through the floor and drop into the ocean beneath the city. Once you're down there, the game gets weird. You can swim under the entire map and look up to see the subway tunnels floating in the void, complete with trains running on invisible tracks. You can even see the drivers inside the cars on the street level, which are usually just floating pairs of arms, because the game doesn't render their bodies to save memory. It's a hilarious way to see how the sausage is made behind the scenes. The steps to pull this off are actually super easy. First, you need to swing all the way down to the financial district at the absolute bottom of the map, head over to the east side of the island, the side facing the Brooklyn Bridge, and follow the coast until you hit the harbor. Once you're there, look for the specific glitched section of the wall and just drop straight into the water. Now, here's the trick. Swim right up against the wall and start mashing the X button. If you do it right, you'll clip right through the boundary. From there, start swimming towards the Freedom Tower to get the best view. You'll be able to see everything from below, including the bottoms of cars and the empty void where city streets should be. But wait, it gets even better. Once you swim over to a non-ocean area underneath the city streets, press X once to jump and then immediately hold R2. You'll actually start web swinging underground. You're literally attaching webs to the bottom of the buildings and swinging in reverse. It's trippy to watch, but don't get too comfortable. If you let go of R2, you will fall straight into the void until the game forces a respawn. This is such a cool glitch that allows players to completely break the illusion of the open world and explore the upside down of New York City. It gives you a rare peek behind the curtain, letting you see exactly how the developers built the map, from the floating subway tunnels to the fact that half the city is just hollow textures floating in a void. It basically lets you play the Matrix version of Spider-Man, where the rules of gravity and collision just stop existing. And speaking of breaking the game, there's another hilarious glitch that turns our friendly neighborhood wall crawler into a literal Man of Steel. In what the community calls the sky glitch or fly glitch, the physics engine sometimes completely gives up during specific collisions. Instead of falling or swinging, Spider-Man just stops obeying gravity. He stiffens up and starts levitating, allowing you to fly around the city without shooting a single web. It looks absolutely ridiculous, because his animation freezes, so he's just T-posing or floating ominously through the sky like a low-budget Superman, proving that sometimes even the best designed games just decide to take a day off. If you read the comics or watched the animated series, you definitely know Screwball, the original internet troll who commits crimes just for the clout. She was basically a live streamer villain long before TikTok was even a thing. Well, Insomniac Games decided to bring her annoying energy into Marvel's Spider-Man with her very own side mission arc that perfectly captures why we love to hate her. But you don't just bump into her randomly. The madness kicks off when you unlock the side mission, Internet Famous. You head to a location in the financial district, expecting to stop a serious kidnapping, but instead of a victim, all you find is a mysterious QR code pasted on a wall. Once you take a picture of it, Screwball hacks your feed, and the prank war begins. She tricks Spidey into chasing her across the city while forcing you to complete challenges for her viewers. You'll be scanning more QR codes she leaves behind and performing specific stunts during combat to trigger her photobomb mechanic. If you time it right, you get huge points. If you missed, she roasts you in front of her live chat. It's honestly the most realistic depiction of a toxic streamer, proving she doesn't care about getting caught, she only cares about the view count. We all love that legendary upside-down kissing scene from the 2002 Spider-Man movie. You know, the rain, the alleyway, the romance. Let's be honest, we have all imagined doing it at least once. Well, Insomniac clearly felt the same way, because they hid a hilarious, twisted reference to it right in the opening boss fight. After you finally defeat Kingpin and leave him helplessly hanging upside down in a web cocoon, Spidey leans in uncomfortably close to his face. Instead of a serious threat, he cheekily asks, "Shall we kiss now?" It's a perfect fourth wall break that mocks the romantic tension of the original movie scene. But instead of Mary Jane, you get a 400-pound bald crime lord who is absolutely fuming. It perfectly captures Spidey's lack of fear. He just took down the biggest boss in the city, and his first instinct is to make it awkward. Good luck trying to get that mental image out of your head. We usually ignore NPCs in open-world games because they just act like mindless zombies walking into walls. But the AI in this game is actually insanely well made, and the best proof is hidden in the graveyard in Harlem, depending on where you are in the story. Specifically, after major tragedies like the City Hall bombing, you will actually find NPCs standing over fresh graves, crying and comforting each other, which adds a heartbreaking layer of realism to the consequences of the plot. But the details aren't always so depressing. If you explore the rooftops, you can stumble upon full-blown parties where citizens will actually cheer for you instead of running away. And if you listen closely to thugs before a fight, you can hear hilarious, fully voiced conversations about their dating problems or rent, making them feel like real New Yorkers right before you web them into a wall. Before we officially got the dynamic duo of Peter and Miles in Spider-Man 2, PC gamers were already living in the future thanks to the modding community. While console players were dreaming of co-op, the modding scene said, "Fine, I'll do it myself." This desire wasn't just a fan dream. Insomniac was actually building an official multiplayer game called The Great Web. It was a live service title where players would team up as different Spider-Verse heroes to fight crime across New York. But it was unfortunately cancelled by Sony and only discovered after a massive data leak. But where the official dev stopped, a modder named HBGDA stepped in. They released a fully functional multiplayer co-op mod for Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered on PC. This mod is an absolute technical miracle because the game was never built to handle more than one player. It essentially tricks the engine into rendering a second Spider-Man controlled by your friend, allowing you to swing through the skyline side by side, race across rooftops, and even fight crime together. It isn't perfect. The animations sometimes glitch out, and the synchronization can get a little janky, but seeing two Spider-Men perched on the same gargoyle was the closest we ever got to a Spider-Verse game before the official sequel. The only catch, unlike most mods, this one is currently locked behind HBGDA's Patreon. meaning you have to pay a subscription to access the server files. But for the chance to swing with the boys, totally might be worth it. So, while the dream of a multiplayer Spider-Man lives on, you have to pay a small admission fee to join the server. Jumping from the Avengers Tower isn't just about travel. It gives you a unique feeling of vertigo that no other game really captures. Standing on that A logo, the highest point in the city, and just stepping off into a freefall creates a genuine pit in your stomach, especially when you wait until the very last second to shoot your web. To make this fall even cooler, you have to use the air tricks system. Once you unlock the skill, you can hold triangle and circle and move the left stick in any direction to pull off insane acrobatics. You can perform the moonsault, a backflip, the flying helix, a spinning torpedo, or the spider roll. And if you chain enough of them together, you can even trigger special animations like the dragon roll. It adds so much immersion because it shows Peter isn't just falling, he's styling on gravity and genuinely having fun being Spider-Man. But the ultimate flex is a specific trick that makes you look like a movie star. If you jump from the top of the tower and press L3 to go into a nosedive, do not shoot a web, just let him fall. If you hit the ground from that height while diving, Spidey won't splat. Instead, he automatically triggers a superhero landing animation, hitting the pavement in that trademark 3-point crouch and literally shattering the concrete around him. It is the perfect way to make an entrance. When the credits roll on any game, we usually just see a long list of names scrolling against a black screen while we check our phones. But Marvel's Spider-Man found a way to immortalize the team inside the game world long before you beat the final boss. If you walk into the feast shelter and head toward the kitchen area, you can find a corkboard labeled Volunteer of the Month. Most players walk right past it, assuming it's just generic background art. But if you zoom in with photo mode, you'll realize those aren't random stock photos of NPCs. On the volunteer wall are photographs of the actual Spider-Man developers from Insomniac Games. It's a great little homage to all the effort that went into bringing the game to life, essentially making the creators of the game the heroes who are helping Aunt May save the city in the background. It's a really wholesome way to put faces to the names we usually skip in the credit sequence. But they didn't just stop at sneaking their faces onto a volunteer wall. They actually went a step further and put their literal office into the game. If you swing around the Upper East Side carefully, you can stumble upon a building that looks a bit different from the generic storefronts. Look up above the doors, and as you can see in the image you shared, the massive Insomniac Games logo is proudly displayed on the facade. It is a hilarious meta detail that implies that while Spider-Man is out there fighting Rhino and Scorpion, the developers are theoretically sitting inside that very building, coding the exact game you're playing at that moment. It's the ultimate fourth wall break. Check out this foreshadowing with Yuri Watanabe. When Spidey jokes about being her date to the policeman's ball, she hits him with a serious question. Do you have a black and white suit? Peter just awkwardly stutters. It is a huge nod to the symbiote suit. It implies Peter either has a dark history with the alien costume, or the developers were just teasing us about the Venom arc long before it happened. But the suit references don't stop at dialogue. They're actually hidden in the environment itself. If you head to the northwest portion of the city and start peeking into windows, which admittedly sounds creepy, you can find a specific apartment with a very special shelf. Inside, you will spot 3 Spider-Man action figures lined up. While 2 are standard, one of them is clearly wearing the black symbiote suit. It was a massive tease for the sequel long before Venom was officially confirmed, showing that Insomniac always had the dark path planned for Peter. It is such a wild coincidence that this Easter egg exists because years later, we finally got 3 Spider-Men together on the big screen in No Way Home. Seeing Toby, Andrew, and Tom share the screen was the ultimate fan dream come true. And looking back at this little shelf in the game, it almost feels like the developers were accidentally predicting the multiverse madness that was about to take over the world. Not all Easter eggs were meant to be noticed right away. Some were carefully placed to foreshadow what was coming next. Even though Norman Osborn is strictly playing the role of Mayor in this game, if you pay attention during the Mary Jane stealth mission, you can actually find the exact moment the Green Goblin is born right in his penthouse. Insomniac hid the evidence in plain sight, proving that while Norman is smiling for the cameras, he's secretly building a supervillain arsenal in the background. If you stop to explore instead of rushing the objective, look closely at the prototypes on his desk. First, there's a high-tech combat helmet featuring a heads-up display designed to identify structural weaknesses, tech that looks suspiciously like the targeting systems inside the Goblin's future mask. On the helmet, we can see the letters ASM-14, which refers to the amazing Spider-Man 14, which, as you guessed it, introduces one of Spidey's greatest villains, Green Goblin. But inspecting the desk further reveals the very grenades Green Goblin uses against spiders in the comics, and in Spider-Man 3 sitting right on the workbench. And let's be real, those are literally pumpkin bombs. It's a chilling detail that confirms the Green Goblin isn't just a future threat. The weapons are already built and waiting for him to pick them up. One of the most emotional and mysterious side stories in the game involves the truth behind Harry Osborn's absence. While the game initially tells you Harry is on a trip to Europe, you can uncover the actual truth by visiting the various research stations scattered across the city. Each station contains a personal audio log left by Harry, and if you listen to them in sequence, you realize he isn't on vacation at all. He's suffering from the same terminal genetic illness that killed his mother. The logs reveal that Harry's European trip is actually a cover story for an experimental medical procedure he's undergoing at an Oscorp facility. As you complete more stations, Harry's voice in the recordings becomes noticeably weaker and more desperate, explaining that these research projects were his way of helping the city before he potentially ran out of time. The most chilling confirmation comes at the very end of the secret post-credits scene. You see Norman Osborn entering a hidden lab in his penthouse, where Harry is suspended in a tank of green liquid, being kept alive by a mysterious black substance that comic fans immediately recognized as the Venom symbiote. This confirms that Norman's entire motivation throughout the game, including the creation of the Devil's Breath cure, wasn't about science or politics, but a desperate, illegal attempt to save his son's life. Beyond its emotional revelations, the city itself is packed with playful details most players swing right past. Insomniac actually managed to sneak a reference to Marvel's biggest rival, DC, right under our noses on a random city street. If you stop swinging and take a look at the storefronts, you can find a shop with a strange name, Trust Us League. When you say it out loud, it becomes obvious. Trust Us League. It's a direct phonetic play on Justice League. It's a cheeky way for the developers to tip their hat to Batman and Superman's team without getting hit with a copyright lawsuit, proving that even in a Marvel game, they couldn't resist acknowledging the distinguished competition. The world of Marvel Spider-Man is so incredibly detailed that Insomniac actually built a functioning, urban ecosystem that most players completely overlook. If you take a break from fighting crime and walk through Central Park, you'll see squirrels scampering up trees, and if you check the grimy corners of subway stations or alleyways, you can actually spot rats scurrying away from your boots. But the pigeons are the real stars, getting their own dedicated storyline in the side mission, helping Howard. Instead of taking down supervillains, this quest forces you to master the game's traversal mechanics to chase down and catch Howard's lost flock as they dart between skyscrapers. It turns what would normally be a simple background asset into a high-speed challenge, proving that Insomniac wanted the city to feel alive, down to the smallest creature, and that Spidey really does care about everyone in New York, even the birds. We already mentioned Daredevil, but the rest of the Daredevil family is also hidden in the city. If you swing over to Hell's Kitchen, you can find Fogwell's gym, the exact training ground where Matt Murdock's father, Jack the Devil Murdock, prepared for his final fight, a legendary location featured heavily in both the Daredevil comics and the popular Netflix series. This is the same gym that Matt went to investigate for the death of his father, and later changed the name of the building to Battling Jack's Gym in honor of his late father, though the original Fogwell would continue to be used. This is one of the coolest Daredevil references I've ever seen. Just a few blocks away, you can find the Clinton Mission Shelter, which in the comics is where Matt's mother, Sister Maggie, works, and where Matt often goes to recover when he's beaten down. Even the dialogue hides these deep cuts. During the Spiderman side mission, a fake Spidey mentions training at Chikara Dojo, which fans will recognize as the martial arts studio managed by Colleen Wing and owned by Danny Rand in the Iron Fist stories. Speaking of Danny, his massive Rand Corporation building towers over Midtown, proving the Iron Fist is running $1 billion empire, while Peter is struggling just to pay his rent. The world building goes even deeper if you know where to look. Down in Greenwich, you'll run into the Sanctum Sanctorium, easily recognizable by the iconic seal of Vishanti's circular window, where Doctor Strange lives and protects our reality from mystical threats. Over in Harlem, you can find the infamous Bar with No Name, a classic comic book hideout, where low-level villains go to grab a drink and swap stories without being harassed by heroes. Insomniac even thought about the aftermath of all these superhero brawls. You can find the Damage Control HQ in the Financial District, the specialized government agency seen in Spider-Man Homecoming, responsible for cleaning up the city after the Avengers get into a high-stakes fight. It's a wild level of detail that proves an entire world of heroes and villains is living their lives in the background of Peter's story. One of the most rewarding scavenger hunts in the game involves tracking down Felicia Hardy, better known as Black Cat. Scattered across the rooftops of Manhattan are several stakeout locations where she's left behind hidden feline cameras. By finding these and spotting her signature cat dolls through the lens, you can eventually track her signal to a secret hideout hidden in the subway tunnels. Inside her lair, you'll find a treasure trove of stolen loot and high-tech gear that sets the stage for the City That Never Sleeps DLC. But the world building doesn't stop there. If you pay attention to Peter's dialogue throughout the game, especially during his backpack collection, you can hear specific audio logs where he reminisces about his past. He mentions things like a business card from a blind lawyer, which is a clear nod to Matt Murdock, and even hints at his history with other heroes, proving that by the time we start playing, Spider-Man has already been a part of this massive, interconnected hero community for 8 years. Like many of the suits that require 100% completion to unlock, there's a hidden 28th suit that doesn't even show up on your suits page, even after you've finished the main story. While most of Spidey's wardrobe is tied to level ups or tokens, this one is the ultimate secret for completionists, because the game keeps it completely invisible until the very last second. To unlock it, you have to track down 50 secret photo ops scattered across the city. These are different from regular landmarks because they don't show up on your main map at all. The only way to find them without a guide is to hit level 50 and equip a specific suit mod that makes them pop up on your minimap. When you're nearby, you can technically start hunting for these the second Peter gets his camera, but without that proximity sensor, you're basically looking for a needle in a haystack. Since there's no in-game checklist to track which ones you've already snapped, it's a total grind, but the payoff is worth it. Once you hit all 50, you're rewarded with the ESU suit, featuring Peter rocking his classic Empire State University shirt and jeans while keeping the mask on. It's a great nod to his college life, and definitely one of the biggest flexes in the game. While you're swinging through the main story, you might notice that you are actually locked into whatever time of day or weather the plot demands. Whether it's a high-stakes night mission or a rainy showdown, Insomniac keeps the atmosphere strictly tied to the narrative to make sure those big story beats hit as hard as possible. You'll occasionally see the time jump around if you start a specific side mission or research station that requires a certain vibe, but you won't be able to manually control the sun and stars until you've officially beaten the game. Once you've rolled the credits and reached the endgame, the city finally becomes your playground. To change the time, just head over to any of the research stations you've unlocked throughout Manhattan. Inside, you'll find a new display panel on the right side that lets you instantly toggle between day, sunset, and night. It's the perfect tool for those of you who love using photo mode, allowing you to get the perfect lighting for your favorite suits without having to wait for the story to catch up. One of the absolute best dialogue Easter eggs happens during a cutscene in the Vulture boss fight, and it's a detail that hits so much harder if you know your cinema history. As they're squaring off, Spider-Man quips, "Yo Adrian, it's me, Spider-Man." On the surface, he's obviously just messing with Vulture's real name, Adrian Toomes, but this is actually a legendary double reference to the 1976 Rocky. In that film's iconic climax, after taking a brutal beating, Sylvester Stallone's character famously shouts, "Yo, Adrian, it's me, Rocky," to find his wife in the crowd. What makes this even more hilarious is that right after Peter drops the line, he sighs and complains that nobody gets my jokes, assuming the reference went way over Vulture's head. But the payoff comes in a later cutscene when Vulture growls, "I'm going to break you." Without missing a beat, Spidey gets genuinely hyped, shouting, "You got it! You got my joke! I'm so happy I could almost stop fighting." It turns out Vulture was accidentally quoting Ivan Drago from Rocky IV, and Peter's reaction is pure gold. It's such a clever layer of world building, because it reminds us that this version of Peter Parker is a massive movie nerd who's probably spent his free time binge-watching 70s and 80s sports dramas just to refine his trash talk. It turns a high-stakes battle into a classic Spidey comedy set piece, proving that for Peter, getting a villain to acknowledge a movie reference is a bigger win than actually winning the fight. While most of the collectibles in the game are pinned right on your map, there's a hidden set of items that most players walk right past without ever realizing they're missing them. If you're exploring the streets of New York, keep an eye out for those red newspaper boxes. You can actually interact with them to grab a physical copy of the Daily Bugle. These aren't just random props. They feature custom front-page headlines that update based on your specific exploits and the major story events you've just cleared. It's a super cool way to see how the city views Spider-Man's actions in real time. If you keep on getting the same headline, it just means you need to dive back into the main story or finish up some side missions to give the press something new to talk about. Beyond the newspapers, you can also stumble upon hidden audio logs tucked away in specific locations that aren't marked on your HUD. Once you find them, they're permanently catalogued in your collections page, filling in the gaps of the game's lore. It just goes to show that if you want to find everything Insomniac hid in this world, you have to spend as much time walking the pavement as you do swinging above it. One of the most heartbreaking twists in the game happens right at the end, when Peter is forced to choose between saving the entire city and saving Aunt May. He ends up making the ultimate sacrifice, but the real gut punch comes in that final hospital room scene. As Peter stands by her bed in his suit, May weakly tells him, "Take off your mask. I want to see my nephew." When a shocked Peter asks how long she's known, she simply smiles and says, "I've known for a while." While this feels like a massive reveal, Insomniac actually foreshadowed this secret throughout the entire game. If you take a break from the main story and explore the Feast Center, you'll find that May's office is filled with massive clues. Right alongside childhood photos of Peter and Uncle Ben, she has various drawings and news clippings of Spider-Man pinned up. It's incredibly telling. Why would a woman running a high-pressure shelter keep a fan wall for a masked vigilante unless she knew exactly who was under that mask? Even her dialogue hits differently on a second playthrough. May constantly gives Peter advice that feels specifically tailored for a superhero, like telling him to be the hero he was meant to be, or checking in on him after long nights. It leaves fans wondering exactly when she figured it out. Did she catch him sneaking through a window, or did she just recognize her nephew's voice and posture after years of him being the city's protector? It adds such a beautiful, tragic layer to their relationship, proving that May wasn't just a bystander, she was Peter's biggest supporter in secret the whole time. While the spotlight is usually on Peter and Miles, Insomniac actually used the background characters to pull off some incredible long-term foreshadowing for the sequels. One of the best examples is Gloria. When you first meet her early in the game, she's a homeless woman Peter saves from a group of thugs. He eventually directs her to the Feast shelter, and if you keep checking in on her, you can actually watch her life transform. By the end of the first game, she's helping Aunt May run the place. And this perfectly sets up her major role in Spider-Man Miles Morales, where she's become the full-time director of Feast North. It's a beautiful, subtle character arc that spans 2 entire games. But Gloria isn't the only one getting an early introduction. If you're paying attention during the first few hours swinging around, you'll hear mention of Howard, the local pigeon enthusiast. Before you even officially meet him for his side mission, you can hear citizens talking about the Birdman or see his pigeons scattered across the rooftops. This early world building makes these characters feel like real New Yorkers with their own lives, rather than just quest givers who spawn out of nowhere. It proves that Insomniac wasn't just making a single game, they were carefully planting seeds for the entire Spider-Verse saga from day one. Seeing Gloria go from a victim on the street to a leader in the community is one of the most rewarding details for fans who take the time to look past the main objective marker. How could it be that one of the most intelligent people in the world wouldn't realize that Peter was actually Spider-Man instead of just working for him? The truth is, he knew almost immediately. One of the most chilling examples of foreshadowing in the game involves Otto Octavius, and while the final battle reveals the truth, you can actually pinpoint the exact second he connects the dots during the mission, something old, something new. When Otto walks into the lab and catches Peter frantically trying to repair his torn, classic suit, Peter offers a panicked excuse that he is simply the tech guy for Spider-Man. While Otto nods along and calls it a noble endeavor, his facial expression tells a different story. He looks at the suit and then directly at Peter's fresh bruises, silently connecting the dots in a way that completely recontextualizes their entire relationship. When Peter wakes up, he finds a new email waiting for him from Otto that reads, "Peter, the revelation of your second job as Spider-Man's suit crafter, is that the right term? Is a reminder of the good man and partner you are. No matter how hard you work, you still find time to help others. I hope you don't mind, but I noticed the suit was a bit damaged, and I took the liberty of sketching up some of my own improvements. Attached are a few ideas I had on how you could enhance his suit and help protect Spider-Man, who does so much for this city. Looking forward to the incredible work that we are doing and changing the world together. Your partner and friend, O." Otto didn't just keep the secret, he actually funded and upgraded Spider-Man by using high-tech carbon fiber to create the advanced suit, a level of military-grade craftsmanship he wouldn't waste on a random vigilante unless he knew exactly who was inside it. This adds a massive layer of tragedy to the finale, because the person who built the hero's main suit is the same man Peter is forced to fight. Even as his mind slips, Otto's actions show he is still trying to spare his friend. Every time he attacks or captures Spider-Man during their encounters, he avoids delivering a lethal blow, still hoping Peter will simply step aside. During the final confrontation, he even outright states, "I tried to warn you, Peter," proving that even as a villain, he was pleading with the son he spent the entire game trying to protect. The villains of Spider-Man 2 were actually being foreshadowed years in advance through the first game, and it all starts with a subtle nod to Sandman. J. Jonah Jameson mentions him in one of his podcasts, saying,
"Walking piles of sand?"
Walking piles of sand. As we discussed earlier, you can see the reference to Sandman, hinting at the upcoming boss fight in Spider-Man 2. But the world building doesn't stop there. It extends deep into the lore of Dr. Kurt Connors, aka the Lizard. We can find a vial of Lizard's blood in one of the Bagpacks collectibles. During one of your early visits to the lab, Otto mentions a doctor who successfully regrew a limb before, which is a clear, tragic nod to Connor's backstory. This foreshadowing eventually comes to a head in the mission Back to School, where Peter has to track down Dr. Isaac Delaney at a Halloween party. In a brilliant piece of narrative irony, Delaney is actually wearing a lab coat and a green, scaly mask. He's literally dressed as the Lizard. It's an incredibly clever detail, because you're trying to save a scientist being hunted for his dangerous, transformative research, and he's dressed as the one scientist who famously transformed himself into a monster. This costume choice confirms that the Lizard is already a well-known public figure in the universe, perfectly setting the stage for his massive role as a primary antagonist in Spider-Man 2. While the game is famous for its smooth traversal, there's a legendary wall run glitch that fans have obsessed over because of how cool it looks when it actually works. It is notoriously inconsistent and requires a bit of luck, but once you master the timing, it sends Spider-Man flying across the city at insane speeds. To pull this off, You have to wall run along the side of a building while holding L2 and circle. As you reach the very edge of the building, at the absolute peak of your momentum, you release both buttons simultaneously. If your timing is frame perfect, the game's physics engine bugs out and catapults Spider-Man into the air far beyond the normal speed limit. Even though many patches have attempted to fix this over the years, the community keeps finding new buildings where the geometry allows for this massive speed boost. It takes a lot of practice to get the apex just right, but seeing Spidey launch like a human slingshot makes the effort totally worth it. Have you ever wondered how to get inside the subway in the game? Although the game doesn't allow it, fans have tried different methods to get inside the subway. Many Reddit users have reported trying to figure this out. Here is how you can pull it off. Wait for the train to arrive, swing at the side of the train, and wall run carefully towards the front. If this is timed perfectly, it's actually possible to glitch and get inside the train, and you can have a look around. There are many ways you can get inside the train, but this might be the easiest. While swinging through the streets, you'll notice many basketball courts scattered across various locations in the game, and what's interesting to note here is that you can actually interact with the basketballs. You can even find NPCs actively playing games or shooting hoops, which adds a great layer of life to the city. However, a popular YouTuber took this small detail and turned it into a viral challenge, trying to actually score a basket. Because Spider-Man doesn't have a shoot button, you have to use his physical hitboxes or web gadgets to nudge the ball toward the rim. It is incredibly difficult and requires dozens, if not hundreds, of tries to get the physics to line up perfectly. But against all odds, it can be done. Seeing the ball finally swish through the net after hours of effort is one of those satisfying, only in a video game moments that proves just how detailed the world's physics engine really is. When Insomniac released Spider-Man Remastered for the PS5, they didn't just give the game a fresh coat of paint. They sparked one of the biggest debates in gaming history by completely replacing Peter Parker's face. While the original PS4 model was beloved by fans, the developers swapped it for a new face, modeled after Ben Jordan. Insomniac's official reasoning was that the new bone structure provided a much better match for the facial capture of Yuri Lowenthal, the actor who provides the voice and performance for Peter. They wanted the micro-expressions and lip-syncing to feel more seamless for the next-gen hardware, even if it meant Peter suddenly looked a decade younger. But the facelift wasn't the only major change. The remastered version pushed the PS5 to its limits with a massive graphical overhaul, introducing ray-traced reflections that make the glass skyscrapers of Manhattan look incredibly realistic. You can actually see the city reflected in Spidey's lenses as you swing by. To sweeten the deal, the remastered version bundled the base game with all 3 The City That Never Sleeps DLCs and added 3 exclusive suits. The star of the show was the long-requested Amazing suit from the 2012 The Amazing Spider-Man movie. Seeing Andrew Garfield's iconic suit rendered with next-gen textures and lighting was a dream come true for fans, finally bringing that sleek, athletic look into the Insomniac universe. One of the most amazing features in the game is that you can actually interact with the NPCs on the street. When the hometown hero swings by, people will stop in their tracks to take photos of him or point him out to their friends. If you land on the sidewalk and walk among them, you can press square to give them a casual wave or a friendly greeting. But it goes way deeper than just a wave. Keep an eye out for citizens with a triangle prompt over their heads. If you approach them, Spider-Man can engage in unique animations, like high-fiving a fan, shaking hands, or even leaning in for a selfie. These interactions aren't just for show, they actually give you a small amount of XP, and greeting 10 citizens unlocks the Spider-Man About Town trophy. Later in the game, these interactions become even more useful. Occasionally, an NPC will flag you down not just for a photo, but to report suspicious activity nearby. This will mark a random crime on your map, showing that the people of New York aren't just background characters, they're actually looking out for their neighborhood and helping Spidey keep the streets safe. The game showcases an insane level of detailing in terms of world building, costumes, voice acting, and even story elements. But the most impressive of all might be the character models. Insomniac tried really hard to make this game as realistic as it possibly could, going far beyond what players would normally see during gameplay. For example, Peter Parker actually has a physically modeled throat that moves when he speaks. If you use photo mode to zoom in through the neck of his suit while he's talking, you can see Adam's apple and throat muscles realistically reacting to his speech. This isn't just a generic animation, it's part of Insomniac's insane commitment to realism, treating the character model like a real person living inside a suit rather than just a static mesh. This level of detail is most noticeable during the intimate cutscenes between Peter and MJ, where the camera is close enough to capture those subtle micro-expressions and physical movements. It makes their conversations feel incredibly lifelike, as you can literally see the physical effort of Peter speaking, especially during their more emotional or tense moments. It's a detail 99% of players will never notice, but it's what makes the cinematics feel so grounded and human. The realism even extends to the way the suits deform. Insomniac used a physics-based muscle system under the costumes, meaning that when Spidey flexes his arm or twists his torso, you can actually see the muscles underneath the fabric bulging and stretching realistically. Even the pupils in Peter's eyes are programmed to dilate and contract based on the lighting in the environment, proving that no detail was too small for the team to perfect. Spider-Man 2018 is filled with some of the most impressive technical details in recent history, but nothing beats the way it handles interrupted dialogue. While most open-world games simply cut a conversation short or force it to restart from the beginning if you trigger a mission, Insomniac developed a resume system that keeps the narrative flowing naturally. If Peter is in the middle of a call with MJ or Miles, and you suddenly start a crime or enter a cutscene, he won't just go silent. He'll actually give a quick, realistic excuse like, "Hang on, I've got to go, something's come up." Once the action is over and you're back to free roaming, Peter will call them back and lead with a specific follow-up line like, "Sorry about that, where was I?" Or, "Anyway, you were saying." The other character will then acknowledge the interruption before picking up the conversation exactly where they left off. This adds an extra layer of detailing that only Insomniac is capable of pulling off. Insomniac really went the extra mile with hidden gems that you would totally miss if you weren't looking for them. For starters, the combat physics are so detailed that if you pause the game in photo mode right as you land a punch, you can actually see saliva and sweat flying out of the enemy's mouth from the sheer force of the impact. But the level of petty detail doesn't stop with the bad guys. If you look closely at the rockets being fired at you by Sable agents or thugs, they actually have a hilarious warning printed on the side that says, "Guaranteed to kill spiders." It's a tiny, snarky touch that shows just how much the villains in this city hate our friendly neighborhood wallcrawler. Even Peter's own jokes turn out to be 100% accurate. In one scene, Peter mentions, "Can't have people taking pictures of my free chest hairs." And if you actually get him shirtless, like in the undies suit, and zoom all the way in with photo mode, he literally has free chest hairs rendered on his character model. The game even keeps track of the passing time in ways you wouldn't expect. If you visit the Feast shelter, pay attention to the Volunteer of the Week board. As you progress through the story, the names and photos on that board actually change to reflect the different people helping out the shelter. And here's a secret for those of you who hate sitting still. During the loading screens, you aren't just stuck looking at a static image. You can actually use the analog sticks on your controller to manipulate the screen, allowing you to zoom in and out or rotate the character model while you wait for the city to load. It's these small, dedicated touches that make the world feel alive and prove that Insomniac was having a ton of fun while making this game. Insomniac hit a pretty cool nod for the comic book nerds in the game's settings by naming the difficulty levels after legendary Spider-Man comic runs, rather than using basic terms like easy or hard. If you're a fan of the source material, you'll recognize that Friendly Neighborhood and Friendly refer to Spidey's classic persona and the 2005 comic series, while Amazing is a direct shout-out to the flagship title The Amazing Spider-Man. For those looking for a challenge, Spectacular pulls its name from the Spectacular Spider-Man. It's a stylish touch that proves the developers wanted to pay respect to the decades of history that made the character an icon, while giving players a more immersive way to choose their playstyle. Ever wonder how Spider-Man PS4 stays so buttery smooth, even when you're hauling through the city at max speed? It's not just magic. It's because the city isn't actually one giant, solid map. The game world is secretly split into over 800 invisible tiles, and the engine only loads the tiny section right around you based on which way your camera is pointed and how fast you're moving. Basically, every time you zip forward, the game is frantically preloading the buildings, collisions and anchor points just a few blocks ahead of you before you even get there. This clever trick is the only reason your webs always have a solid surface to stick to, and why you almost never see buildings pop in or the frame rate stutter. It's wild to think that if the game showed you what was actually happening behind the scenes, you'd realize you're basically swinging through a void that's building itself in real time. One of the most rewarding parts of exploring the city is hunting down the 55 hidden backpacks, each of which serves as a mini museum of Peter's 8-year history as a hero. Insomniac packed these with deep-cut references that explain everything from his early gadget prototypes to his complex personal life, such as a menu from his real first date with MJ, where he admits he wished he could have afforded a fancier place. The attention to detail is staggering. For instance, the barcode on his Oscorp visitor pass reads ASM 1964, a nod to the year the Green Goblin debuted in the comics, while a bottle of Oscorp web fluid features the code TASM 1965-31, referencing the Amazing Spider-Man issue 31 from 1965, which marks the first appearance of Harry Osborn. Other collectibles highlight Peter's more personal side, like a selfie from the top of the Empire State Building, used to conquer his fear of heights, or a locket containing a photo of his parents, government agents whose true history Peter wishes he knew more about. The game even pokes fun at past titles, such as a kid's drawing given to Spidey for saving a balloon, which is a hilarious reference to the infamous missions from the Spider-Man 2 movie game. This level of detail extends to every item. The rejected suit designs feature a crossed-out Deadpool-inspired costume, and even Aunt May's wheat cake recipe is taken straight from the comics. The lore goes even deeper through subtle names and signatures. The self-help book Peter carries is written by Dr. Ludwig Reinhardt, an alias for the villain Mysterio, and his university thesis is graded by Professor Warren, the man who eventually becomes the Jackal. Even a simple good luck card from the Daily Bugle contains signatures from iconic characters like Eddie Brock, the future host of Venom. Finally, the fan-made comic book found in a backpack is a heartwarming real-world tribute, as the cover art is signed by the two children of Insomniac's senior animator, Bula Rebello. There's actually a real game store inside the city in the Midtown area in Spider-Man called Gamer Paradise. If you peer through the window, you can spot a Spider-Man plush toy sitting on the shelf, which is the exact same model Peter keeps as one of his backpack collectibles. Even more interesting is the hardware on display. At first glance, the console in the window looks like a Nintendo Wii, but if you use photo mode to focus and zoom in, the design actually looks much more similar to a classic PSX. The attention to detail goes even further, as the controllers in the shop window look remarkably like the real-world Superboy portable console. This love for handheld gaming is a recurring theme, as one of the backpack collectibles you can pick up is a portable game device that looks exactly like a PS Vita. Now, every game has them, and The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is no exception. It's packed with details that even veterans with over 1,000 hours in the game may have never noticed. Click the video on screen, and let's talk about one of the best open-world games.